the better off that you have no idea what I'm doing. It's at this point, Jorge, let's be honest, it's week 15. If anybody or everybody that's listening is in the best of moods, stressful moods, but the best of moods, because unless you are, well, maybe your wife, my wife, some friends of ours, or people that we've paid to listen. Yes, your wife does beat you. Oh, at fantasy football. Yeah, my wife just beats me. So, but needless to say, maybe the wives out there listening that need to beat their husbands in their IDP leagues will tune in for this episode of Shoot the Gap. Yes, it is week 15, or betterly known as playoff week number 1 for most leagues. I can't speak for every league. Some leagues are, starting next week, so they have 4 teams. Some leagues started last week, like Scott Fishbowl, etc. But for the majority of the leagues, it is playoff week 1. This is Jorge Edwards. This is Nate Markham. This is Shoot the Gap. And yes, if you are listening, watching, recording, transcribing, whatever you may be doing, chances are you're here because you too are in the playoffs. And now we need the Jim Mora, drop of playoffs, but I think it's overplayed, honestly. I hope that there's a coach that has a new one where it's not just that anymore. It's time for a refresh. Let's see what we can get. Maybe anybody out there that has a better one, let us know. But there's nothing better than Fantasy and Frames content. I can tell you that. And if you want more content, obviously go over to fantasyandframes.com. If you're still here as part of the Wednesday night fantasy marathon, this is the finale. Save the best for last, as they say. At least that's what I tell myself. And that's what you tell me all the time, right?
That's right. In fact, Jamie's like, hey guys, Jamie's here chilling.
Yeah, of course Jamie's here. Jamie, I gotta tell you, Jamie, I hope it's because you two are in the playoffs. If not, of all the people, I would say he may be one of the few that just came to say hi and chit chat and hang out, because this is our Wednesday night hangout. I mean, we might talk fantasy football or IDP and everything else, but for the most part, it's our chance just to kind of to hang out a little bit. So how have you been, man?
Man, I am doing well. I'm wearing this shirt because my wife did 2 things besides beat me. Spoiler alert, she's the one who pushed me down the stairs back in July. Just kidding. She beat me at fantasy football. She didn't actually beat me this week. Her and I were both needing to win our matchups to secure in my home league the final playoff spot, and we ended up both winning. I needed her to lose and me to win. She ended up winning. Points for, tiebreakers, all that jazz. So I tell her, great job, congratulations, yada, yada, trying to be the bigger sport. And, of course, she gives me crap, and she's like, no, you have to wear this shirt on the air. And I'm like, fine. And, she says
you had that shirt already? Like you had it pre-made, or is this something you had just had just in case?
She had bought this for me years ago. I just never wore it, and I didn't have a reason to wear it until now.
I'll do that.
I know. Well, that's a lie.
Humble brag.
Yeah, no, but she, you know what she said to me, Nate, though? She's like, you call on PJ Locke last week. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I read your article. And I'm like, oh.
You can read?
Yeah. Yeah, I would never say that. She's like, yeah, I read your stuff. I've been reading your stuff all season. Great recommendations. Really enjoyed the PJ Locke thing because that got me 15 points in our league. And I'm like, and that brings us to like, for all you content creators out there who play in home leagues, you give out great advice on your shows and your articles on your whatnot, and it's great. But then let's say you do poorly in your home league, right? And it's like you just they just shank you with comments here or there when you don't win the whole thing. But I guess it goes with the territory.
That's why I have been giving out false information all year for everything that's been wrong. It's by design. Gotcha. And everything that's been right has been by design, because then you don't know which one is correct. Like Jamie, unfortunately, didn't know which of the content to listen to because he only made the playoff in 14 of the 23 leagues that he's in. Yes, You do suck. 14 of 23, I believe, is a pretty decent rate. That's about an 60%. Nope, that's not right. Yeah, it is. Yeah, sorry.
I don't do
That's
math.
good.
No.
I have a calculator, but
Okay, good. Thank you.
I don't need a calculator to know some of the news and notes from this past week. I may need a calculator to add up the total amount of games that will be lost by some of the players that suffered injuries in week 14. Hopefully, it is a low number, and I don't have to take off the shoes and use the toes to go along with the fingers. But there are some, what I would consider substantial losses. We don't know the outcome of everybody quite yet, but Blake Cashman in Houston suffered a hamstring injury, didn't return to the game, likely not to play in week 15, first round of the playoffs. Don't know if the Houston situation outside of Blake Cashman is worth investing in, but I guess that's something that we can definitely talk about at a later time in the show, along with the whoever may step in for Jamin Davis. I know Jamin Davis has been one of your guys all year long. So when he suffered this shoulder injury, I'm sure that was a little more devastating to you than most.
I had no idea the conversation of him even going on IR was an option.
Neither.
Literally, the thing comes across the newswire across your phone, across the phone. Exactly, Morse code style.
Yeah.
And do people even know what Morse code is these days? I probably don't think so. But I digress. Yeah, he's out for the season, having surgery. That blows. That blows so much.
It does. It does. And like I said, we'll talk a little bit about who the next man up, if it's worth investing in, kind of paying attention to that whole situation in Washington. In Miami, we knew that Jerome Baker was going to be out last week, and then it was announced that he will go on the IR. Again, another person who we should talk about as far as who will step in, how they filled his role. Filling the role of one, this next one hurt me, whereas that Jamin Davis injury really hit home to you. Kyle Hamilton left the game, had been playing, really was on fire as of late, and he has a sprained MCL. The positive news is that reports are that there is a potential that he might even play. I think that's, probably not likely, but I am an optimist at all times, and I think that it's worth noting. Pay attention. We'll keep you posted along the line and kind of go from there. Malcolm, it is playoff time, and I will tell you, number one, welcome. Good to see you. I know you're in the playoffs as well, because you and Jamie both are highly intelligent people. But we normally wouldn't answer an offensive question for you, because we have said it's not fair to answer offensive questions for an IDP show. But you have been here since the beginning, and I feel like we can do this. So, all right, let's jump in.
Okay. So he says, play 2, Devonta Smith, Justin Jefferson, Mike Evans, or Puka Nacua. I'm assuming that this is PPR, full PPR. Malcolm, if you can let us know whether it's that or a non-PPR, because that can kind of help with swaying our decisions here. Although, in this instance, for me, one is Mike Evans. It's half PPR. Okay. Oh, how about that? Right down the middle. So for me, Mike Evans would be the automatic one here. And for me, then it comes down to Puka Nacua or Devonta Smith. I like Puka more so versus Washington this week. So yeah, give me Mike Evans and Puka Nacua.
Yeah, I hate going against Justin Jefferson, but I think that's just a likely, a hope and a prayer. I don't like the chest injury. It sounded like it was going to be worse than it actually is, and I think maybe we're just getting the positive vibes just going into it. But the matchup, the situation's better than it was with not having Dobbs. I think having Nick Mullins is an improvement for Jefferson. But I too am on the side of Mike Evans. I think last week was a one-off, and I think if any given week that we've seen Mike Evans have a dud the following week, which hasn't been often this year at all, just in his career, the next week is always go back to Mike Evans. And it's been that way the entire season. Green Bay, matchup-wise, a little challenging, but still, it's Mike Evans. The second one, though, like you said, is the challenge because it's Puka or Devontae Smith for me as well. I just haven't been as impressed with the Eagles passing offense. I know Jalen, he gets it done, but it always seems like he holds the ball too long and he's getting more pressures than normal. I know this is a long-winded way of saying Puka. So Puka and Mike Evans, you have us both in agreement. Sorry. My brain is in IDP mode right now, and I got to go back to offense, and it throws me.
Here you go. IDP thing right here by Jamie. Lost Jerome Baker in Dynasty League.
Well, let's hope that, you know what, there are linebacker replacements out there, Jamie, and we'll talk about some and see if we can't fill in for this week and then going forward. One of those people that another person that you might have to replace, or some people are going to have to replace, is the combination of TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith. Both suffered a concussion. Alex Highsmith is trending in the wrong direction. There's optimism that TJ Watt will play. That's definitely something to pay attention to. Grant Delpit, the whole Cleveland Browns. Let's talk about the Cleveland Browns defense as a whole, Jorge. Here what's left. Exactly right. I mean, here's the team that for 10 weeks was the best defense in football. You started nobody against them, and now they're susceptible across the field. They don't have Grant Delpit. Denzel Ward's been banged up. And then OGOK, Bunny Okunrokwo, he is out for multiple weeks now as well. So their pass rush is diminished. It's Anthony Walker. The list goes on and on. So they're thin across the board. This was just two more. Grant Delpit going on the IR was devastating, especially considering, took his bag of money, ran down the steps or ran somewhere, and then bam, went straight to the urgent care, I'm guessing, with that cash that he can pay cash for. So that's good. Jamie picked up Henry To'oTo'o to replace Baker. From a dynasty standpoint, I'm cool with that, actually. I like him going forward. I think he fits into that system well, and I think that D'Amico Ryans, obviously we know D'Amico Ryans is going to love him because he went to Bama. But this week or going forward, I'm not so certain because last week he played 10% of the snaps, just not as involved with Christian Harris and Denzel Perryman, and we'll get there to maybe what we think from there, right?
No, yeah, absolutely. To answer this question here from Malcolm, he does have an IDP question. Yes. Ivan Pace Jr. and Ernest Jones, good plays this week, point per tackle. I think this is a great look. First of all, I want to give a round of applause to Ivan Pace Jr., who since Jordan Hicks went down, I know he's been everything we've been hoping he would be coming on this season as a rookie. It's just a great story, undrafted, free agent, University of Cincinnati. Big knock on him was the size, and you saw him with the game-sealing interception last week, which was just phenomenal if you like defensive football, which we do because we're talking IDP, right? And, of course, Ernest Jones against the Commanders. I'm trying to get as many Rams into my lineups this week, which hurts me to say as a Commanders fan for IDP purposes. So,
yeah, I'm right there with you. And obviously it's, my love affair with Ivan Pace has been since week one, and it's really nice. I hate that it's because of the result of Jordan Hicks. I like to see him earn it on his own merit, but I think that he's taken that and he's earned at least consideration for for his career to be. We kept comparing him to London Fletcher, which might not be the most fair comparison, but I think it's pretty fair. By undersized, undervalued, it came in and then just absolutely has stolen the show. Ernest Jones is a great play as well. So I do like both of those. Absolutely. In Philly, Reed Blankenship suffered a concussion. We saw Sidney Brown step in and fill the majority of those roles. If he's out, Sidney Brown is a worthwhile look at defensive back. Speaking of defensive back, Devin Witherspoon did leave the game with a hip injury. If Devin Witherspoon is out, I don't know if I would necessarily find anybody across Seattle to replace him. But in cornerback-only leagues, he's been just fantastic, right, Jorge?
Oh my God, yeah, just the tackle, just as a corner, slot corner, just the tackle numbers have been there. He's been a big play waiting to happen. It's very, for Dynasty, I would be very tempted to have him in my top 12 if I was doing cornerback specific. Probably top 8, to be honest with you. He's really, really good.
Absolutely. If you look at overall Fantasy Pro scoring, he's the defensive back 12 overall. And that's on an average, not a total basis. But actually, it's on both. Take that back. He's averaging 12 per game, and that's missing week 1 and then having a couple duds here and there, injury-based week 14. But he's been incredible. Proud of Illinois. Quay Walker did not practice today, did not play last week. We know that you wrote about Isaiah McDuffie in your waiver wire article, which if you haven't read that yet, still not too late. Waivers, granted, you're not fighting against everybody on waivers anymore. Luckily, there's only a few of you guys out there. So go pick up Isaiah McDuffie, and I would feel pretty comfortable with him in your lineup in deeper leagues for sure. All right, Jorge, Malcolm wants to know, would you start Ivan Pace over Levante David? And let's say Levante David, 2 different situations. Would you start him over Levante David if Devin White plays? And would you start him over Levante David if Devin White doesn't play?
I honest with you, I would still ride the hot hand with Ivan Pace. We look at this, what's going on here with the Vikings defense. It's been not horrible the past couple weeks. Obviously, it played very well against the Raiders, held them to 0 points. And Ivan Pace, just the volume has been there. Levante David, he was on pace for getting to 100 tackles. I forget how far he is away from that currently.
He's got 96 right now in the season.
Okay, all right. So no, I would roll with Ivan Pace. I like riding the hot hand here, although I don't think you can go wrong. I think it's semantics here, pulling strings here. But give me Levante David, especially this week. Or excuse me,
Ivan Pace.
Yeah.
No, and I'm right there with you. And honestly, I would have thought 2 weeks ago, if you gave me the same situation, clairvoyance looking ahead, I said Ivan Pace against Cincinnati. With Jake Browning, I wouldn't have liked it. I would have assumed it's going to be, a very boring Joe Mixon approach, very not even efficient Joe Mixon approach. And we've been proven wrong. Cincinnati can move the ball. Ivan Pace is in a position that he should be on the field plenty. And there's no linebackers even cannibalizing any of his tackles because they play 3 safeties so often that we know one of them can, but it's been the Ivan Pace show. So I'm right there with you. I'm team Ivan Pace. I definitely want an Ivan Pace signed helmet and or something for my home here, because my daughter Haley is the Minnesota Vikings fan of the household now. She fell in love with Kirk Cousins and the Vikings before the season started, and she's been on Team Minnesota. Even I get emoji sent, and she's 22, so it's not like she's 7 sending me the eye rolling emoji when they were tied at 0 this past week in that barn burner against the Raiders. It was an amazing game. She said, "Why do I even watch the Vikings?" We talked about Devin White earlier. Did not practice again, trending in the wrong direction. Again, I like Levante David, but I don't know if I care for any other linebackers with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Any other news or notes that you saw talk about?
Yeah, let's talk about Dakota right here in the chat. Jets family in the house, and has the little green heart and then like the green and yellow circle or white circle and the what. I've never seen such a devoted Jets fan on Shoot the Gap, let alone any fantasy and frames programming at close to 11 p.m. at night. So welcome, Dakota. I think this is the first time.
Yes, Dakota. And I will tell you, I have some news about the Jets pass rush coming up for maybe week 16. And look, Marcus, what's up, buddy? I believe that if there was ever a time we could start talking about the Dallas Cowboys, Marcus Mosher would be fan number 1. We started talking about Damone Clark at the Expo, and it was Marcus who actually, you want to talk about an insider who knows everything about the Cowboys. It was his input that really made me feel comfortable going with Damone Clark. Now, it's been a little weird in that each week it's been Marquise Bell, then Damone Clark, then Marquise Bell, back to Damone Clark. I don't like some of the inconsistencies, but we've seen that. I would love to talk, Marcus, a little bit about Marquise Bell what his future has in store with this Cowboys linebacking core. If that's something just, now, or if that's maybe how comfortable they feel in the future. So, yeah. And got everybody in the chat now. Rugaru's here. Evening, gents. Rugaru, I know, is in the playoffs, like Marcus is, and Dakota and everybody. It's a big playoff fest. And see, you ask and you get the answer you want to know about the Cowboys and Marquise Bell, I guess. Sorry, Marcus and Marquise. They love him, and rightfully so. There's nothing short of just, he's got great speed and a converted safety to linebacker. Instinctually, he's everywhere around the ball. And I don't watch nearly enough games that, Marcus and some of the other Cowboys fans do. But get the tackle efficiency up just a little bit more, just under 11% last week. But the one thing I like, though, is he's playing more third and fourth down snaps, too. And so we're starting to see him. And for people listening, if you haven't listened before and you don't know the Marquise Bell trick, if you play in a sleeper league, him being defensive back eligible is the cheat code of cheat codes, a la maybe another player we will talk about in a little bit. Jorge?
It's interesting. And I just pieced this together. You're talking about Marquise Bell, eerily familiar to Demarion Overshawn, the rookie out of Texas, I believe they drafted this year, who is a converted safety and now linebacker, who they were really high on. I believe he tore his ACL against the Seahawks in the preseason. Interesting that's kind of like the skill set type of player they want to have in their linebacking core now. Faster guys who can shed blocks, maybe help with edge, getting to the passer, getting to the running back through the various running back lanes. Interesting those two. I didn't put that together just now.
Yeah. They this isn't just sucking up to Marcus and all, but I really like what the Cowboys have put together. Obviously, when you have Parsons, but just the pressure they can establish from the inside, and that's even really with with Mozzie not getting the snaps completely. So it's continuing to grow. My Eagles fans here from Haley's boyfriend's friends and all that are big Eagles fans hate Dallas passionately, but I secretly like some of the things they're doing. I just have to keep it under wraps or they won't continue to come over and bring me beer. So that's what it is. Dakota, if you look behind me over my right shoulder, that says enough. That's, Mr. Lateral himself, Travis Kelce. He is on sides, in case you're wondering. He did look over and got approval from the line judge over here.
That's so stupid. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not even going to talk. I don't want to talk about it.
Why does referee have to give approval? Like it's not their job to tell you you're playing the game right or wrong.
It's always been that way. They always do it. They've done it for 1,000 years. And if he looks, and he wasn't even set when he asked him, he was walking to the line and he looked over. It's instinctual. I think they just look over and they're expecting the official line judge to say, Kadarius, back 2 yards. But yet then you watch again, and we see Monday night when Jalen Waddle's lined up in that same spot numerous times, no flag. But I don't want to talk about it. Let's move on. Malcolm wants to ask a real question. This one is challenging. This one, pick 3. I got to tell you, you're looking at a situation that of all the people there, it's like, man, you can't not start Bobby Wagner just from what he's done from a consistency standpoint. Fred Warner has proven me wrong considerably this year. I do believe that from a matchup standpoint, Arizona is a team that I would probably sit the most likely against, but Arizona's been really, effective to the opposing linebackers. The last 3 weeks, almost 20 tackles per game. So they're tricky. What do you think? I want to let you go first so that I can just basically either piggyback off of you.
All right, pick 3. Ivan Pace, Bobby Wagner, CJ Mosley, Fred Warner. So Wagner, Mosley for me. So now it comes down to Warner or Pace. You said it earlier. The cannibalization of tackles by another linebacker. We have Dre Greenlaw there, can take away tackles from Fred Warner, whereas Ivan Pace, the Vikings have been deploying 3 safeties, like you said. So give me Ivan Pace. I can't quit Ivan Pace. It's Wagner. Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy.
It's
I can't
crazy.
believe I'm saying that, but it's that's how I'd roll the first three.
Yeah, I hate to say I'm right there with you. It's so hard to go against Warner, but he's starting to get back. Like we saw that stretch really early in the season up until week 9 or 10, I guess week 8 or 9, where Warner was getting the 20-point games every couple outing, and he still has, but he's sprinkled in those 5 and 6 tackle games the last couple weeks, which always has me worried that he's sometimes the better linebacker, like an actual really good football linebacker, doesn't always translate to fantasy points. And let's be honest, San Francisco is going to do their best to keep everybody off the field, even in what I think is a ass stomping that they're going to give to Arizona. So I'm right there with you. What better segue than to assume that we have an idea of any of these people who's been money or who will be money and who will be a mirage than just to do it. So, of course, money and mirage. Typically, what we look at is we're going to look at a list of players who, from maybe waiver wire, who had a huge performance in the previous week or the previous weeks, plural, who may be a good money play for this week and going forward. In this instance, we're going to look exclusively at this week only. And then, Rougarou, his clairvoyance.
Mm-hmm.
I inserted a new segment this week where we're going to look ahead for people just like you who got the number 1 spot, first round bye. You've been, just full of knowledge all year. You need to look at week 16 because there is a very good chance that not only one, you have limited people that you're going up against for the waivers, so you have less greedy fingers into the waiver wire pool that's plucking those players out. But 2, most other people, myself included, I'm a little superstitious. Jorge, are you superstitious that you don't want to look ahead to the next week when you're picking players, or do you not give a shit?
Yeah, I can't. I have to stay. It's interesting. When I'm in the playoffs, I can't look too far ahead. But leading up to the playoffs, I'm like, I'm looking at the playoff schedule of this. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely. Everybody, right? I know every week 17 matchup possible because from week 2 we've already been looking at that. Oh yeah, look at this juicy matchup that so and so has. Oh man, the Jags get this team. Blah, you get the idea.
Oh sure.
So let's do that. Let's take a look first at Money and Mirage for this week. We talked earlier about Blake Cashman. Hamstring injury, missed the game. Christian Harris. Yes, the Houston Texans, linebacking core that we hate so much because it's been a weird, I would say, roulette rotating situation. Saw Christian Harris play 92% of the snaps. He saw a tackle efficiency nearing 16%. And so, according to PFF, had double-digit tackles. So, Christian Harris in this particular matchup this week, money or mirage? So that's against Tennessee, at Tennessee, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So that makes this even more money for me. You look back since week 11, 33 total tackles, 23 of which were solo. If we're using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, which we like to do, that's an average. He's been averaging 13.5 a game. It really comes down to is Cashman playing? Is he not? I would tend to think that he's not, but I need to go check the practice reports as well as look into that as the week goes on. Mm-hmm. Should Cashman miss time though? I think he's a very serviceable fill-in this week, given the matchup against Tennessee, which we should see a lot of Derrick Henry and even Tajay Spears getting into the mix down in the running back position.
Yeah, Tennessee is not just a quick 3-and-out nasty matchup. I think that they, we saw last week, Levis is capable, hasn't been great all year, but of keeping him on the field at least where we can see that value from Christian Harris. And the question that Henry Tua earlier, that was brought up. I don't know outside of Christian Harris anybody that I necessarily, because Denzel Perryman is going to be most likely the person who's going to see the LB2 snaps. But I could see Tua eating into his and those two cannibalizing each other. So it's Christian Harris one, and then both are kind of, exactly. Not much more for me, at least.
Yeah. Going back to Malcolm here real quick. He says, hate to keep asking questions. Dude, ask away, ask away,
Yeah,
ask away.
Good time.
Need one flex, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Smith, James Cook, Rashee Rice.
Damn.
Am I crazy for just so easily looking at this list and going, all right, skip over Jefferson's name? I'm not like it. It's I think I would go Devontae Smith here. And the fact that I say it so confidently without even thinking about Justin Jefferson, I think he's due for a bounce back. I think he's, the Seahawks team. This should actually be a really fun game. The birds and the birds here taking each other. Devonta Smith. You saw the strip fumble he had against the Cowboys on Sunday night. You better believe that you better believe this Eagles team is going to be very motivated this week to make some plays, and I think they're in a much better position. I trust the quarterback situation there for Philadelphia. Give me Devonta Smith.
Yeah, and without, like we said, we talked earlier about Devin Witherspoon not being there. That's just one added area. I think that the Eagles would be smart to try to continue to move Devontae Smith around, maybe into the slot occasionally here and there to take advantage of that matchup. And we even saw earlier that Tariq Woolen, who was in Pete Carroll's doghouse, had some struggles quite a bit. And I think that would be my go-to as well. Even though I know Rashee Rice is probably, of all the names, is the quote-unquote like kind of the sexiest name, simply because what we've seen, this escalation of his involvement in that offense. But I just don't trust. I still can't trust it completely. I know he's dare I say, the number one option now in Kansas City. It's still Travis Kelce, but sometimes when the number one option is completely blanketed and taken away, that opens up Rashee Rice, and he's been fantastic. That's Devontae Smith next matchup for me as well. All right. So I think we both say money for Christian Harris in this matchup against Tennessee. We talked earlier, your boy Jamin Davis out. It sucks, shoulder surgery. David Mayo is going to step in. David Mayo in a matchup that I would say, I don't know, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think personally against the Rams offense from the linebacking core in Washington? Is this a money play for David Mayo just on volume and opportunity alone? Or is this simply a mirage that he's just not that good of a player?
So you look at Washington, and per RPO Football, Washington allows the 14th most tackles to the linebacker position.
Do the opposite.
Blah blah blah.
What do the Rams do?
I'm sorry, the Rams. Oh, sorry, my bad. I take that back. The Rams allow the fourth fewest.
Yeah, they suck. Exactly.
Well, okay. Basically take the argument I was about to make and say, even though basically what I was going to say was, even though this might look like a good situation, I don't trust it. It's not a good situation, and I still don't trust it. So he's mirage for me.
Yeah, same here. I know the volume could be there, but I don't believe it yet. And I think that, don't get me wrong, if you're in the super deepest of deep leagues, that's one thing, but I don't think that's the case with many of the IDP leagues that are going to look at David Mayo. Now, defensive back, there's many people that have probably made it to the playoffs because they have Kyle Hamilton. I know Kyle Hamilton has had his weeks where he's kind of gone missing at times, and I had to listen to a lot of that because I was banging the drum on Kyle Hamilton all season long, or preseason going in. And I know that it's mostly on the heels of one major week, but he is the defensive back 6 on Fantasy Pro scoring for the season. He is now most likely going to miss it week 15. We're not ruling him out yet. This sets up for one Geno Stone. Geno Stone is going to be money or mirage.
Going against Jacksonville. I'm going to go mirage. You look at box safety percentages last week for the Baltimore Ravens at safety. Kyle Hamilton, like I said, he had 20.9%. Geno Stone had 30%. But Marcus Williams even was getting into it, with 20.9%. So the question is, like, who are we really trusting to get those box snaps? Because that's what we really want at the safety position, at the defensive back position. We want basically safeties that are treated as de facto linebackers that can help rack up tackles and run support to help establish a solid fantasy floor. So I'm a little concerned there. Geno Stone will get the volume if Kyle Hamilton is not there, obviously, him and Marcus Williams. But as far as who's going to be playing more in coverage or not, that's the deciding factor. And so I'm going to go mirage here.
Yeah, I think that a lot of his value early in the season was tied with his ability to pick off passes. I mean, there was a stretch there where he had 5 games in a row with interception. 4 games, 4 games in a row, 5 of 6. And against this, asked me last week going into it, and I would have said it's going to be money because I don't trust CJ Beathard throwing the ball, and I think that would be a great situation. I still don't know if I trust Trevor Lawrence on that, the ankle, but then again, clearly he seemed fine, I guess, all intents and purposes. But I am a mirage if you only start your top 24 defensive backs. I have them outside my top 24. I think that if you have to start a defensive back 3, he's right there. He gets really close to that 36 to 40 range, or 30 to 36 range, somewhere around there for me. So I'm still going to say he's a mirage, but it's really, really close. That's probably not helpful for anybody. What could be helpful, though? What?
No, so that makes sense. I mean, outside you're rolling to 3 DBs, and yeah.
And don't get me wrong. When we get our finalized rankings, you can go over to fantasyandframes.com, find Jorge and my rankings for week 15 and going forward. We'll have those updated. I will have mine updated tomorrow to throw onto the site to make sure, and I will let you know where I have Geno Stone. I want to know where you're going to have Alex Anzalone. Yes, the Alex Anzalone show continues to roll on as he comes back, and of course, we see, just like you wanted, a couple of productive weeks out of both Derek Barnes and what you saw is Jack Campbell really turn in performances. He's been phenomenal. Just Alex Anzalone returning I wish that was the mirage. Him returning, I think that is, unfortunately, Detroit seems to think that's a money play. And he comes in, he plays 96% of the snaps. I don't know what else to say, man. I hate it because I just love the upside. But against a Denver team that realistically, against a linebacker, pretty decent. I mean, you talk about the last 3 weeks, and you're upwards of almost 20 tackles to the linebacker position. Is Alex Anzalone money this week? Oh, doesn't it suck?
All right, let me say some words here about Alex Anzalone. I think he's money. Opportunity is there. The production has been there for IDP purposes. Do you think that a lot of us are just sour on Alex Anzalone because when we're looking at his actual efficiencies and metrics and whatnot, we keep seeing the dreaded red color next to every single category, and it's like, how are you still here? But he still persists. I don't know. Maybe there's
I don't think that's unfair. I think that he has, he has these missing weeks where he has, 5 tackles, 6 tackles, 5 tackles, 6 tackles. But in those bad tackle weeks, you know what he does? He has a pass deflection in one week when he has 5 tackles or 6 tackles. Then he has a sack in the next one. And then he puts up an 11 tackle game, buoyed by an 8 or 9 tackle game with a couple pass deflections. And then he throws in the game like he did against Vegas, where he has 2 sacks. These uncharacteristic games that he gets into, it just reaffirms you're like, damn it. He has these, multiple 20-point games, multiple 15, 16-point games. And it's the curse of the PFF grades that I look at and I go, Red's bad. He sucks. So I don't want him. But we've said this from day one. You don't have to be an actual good player at your position to be fantasy relevant, contrary to offense. Offense, sure. You have to earn targets and earn carries and be efficient with the ball. Defense, you have to be on the field, around the ball, instinctual in some regards, but being on the field that much. It's there. So, all right, what is one of the questions we have? So, River wants to know, it seems like the Rams have a juicy IDP schedule for the playoff weeks. Thoughts on Byron Young or John Johnson III / Quincy Lake? I will say one thing. Going into last week, there was a question on Twitter, and I don't remember who it was that asked, and they gave a list of about 4 people. They said, who would you rather have rest of season through the playoffs? And it was defensive linemen of the ilk of some of the, the Montez Sweat, I think was one, like Trey Hendrickson. And then it was like Aaron Donald's name was on there. And I said, give me Aaron Donald, because you have matchups against the Commanders, the Saints, and the Giants in the playoffs. 2 of the 3 worst pass blocking teams and that have allowed the most sacks in football. What is your take? And I noticed he mentioned Byron Young. You may have another name too to add to that list.
Yeah. So for me, if he's healthy to good to go, Michael Holt, I think, is the one I'd want as opposed to Byron Young. Hoke, let's see here. Since week 11, he's tallied 11, solo tackles, 5 assisted tackles, a sack, 10.8 points in Fantasy Pros scoring. Has a great matchup against Washington. For me, and I mentioned tackles first because I with my edge rushers, defensive linemen, I like to get the ones that have the high tackle floor that can then get propelled into DL1 or DL2 discussions if they get a sack or a quarterback hit or a half a sack. Give me that elevated floor where I think Hoke is at. But, playing opposite of Hoke, Byron Young has been playing very well in terms of capitalizing on the attention Hoke has been getting. Doesn't have the tackle floor as high, but the big play upside is there. And you mentioned at safety, John Johnson III and Quincy Lake. Damn, Ruguru, it's like you read my waiver wire article here. I'm actually, I am cautiously optimistic about JJ III. The past couple of weeks, he's had, 8 solo tackles, 6 assisted tackles, although one was like a majority solo. The other one was a majority assist. Doesn't matter. He's getting you double-digit fantasy points. He's becoming serviceable. And against this matchup against Washington, in this specific week, I don't know for the entire rest of the fantasy playoffs, but for this week, I would be very pro him as well as Michael Hoke.
Yeah, I'm especially the pass rush side in those matchups. Washington is great to basically every defensive position. Washington has been just that one offense that I'm comfortable elevating every position around because Washington has done a great job converting third downs. They continuously stay on the field offensively, and they've done a really good job of, inflating some of that IDP upside for people. So I'm right there with you. I do want to see if last week the switch, if Fuller will see more box snaps and Johnson will go a little bit more for, that's hard to detect on a week in and week out basis for sure, especially considering the volatility. But let's get away from Alex Anzalone. Let's go ahead and talk about one player that could be interesting. We talked earlier about the defensive back opportunity when you have linebacker snaps, and that's on sleeper, people that are designated with the defensive back tag that are playing at linebacker, a la Marquise Bell. A new one is inserted, and that's in Indianapolis. We saw EJ Speed not play this past week. He's trending to be in that same situation this week. Ronnie Harrison stepped in and played significant snaps, 96% of the snaps to be exact, at linebacker. Jorge, you have I'd say money and mirage situation for a defensive back based lineup spot who's getting linebacker snaps. Is that a money play or is that a mirage trap play, if you will?
I look back on his tackle efficiency last week, which wasn't too good. I believe it was like 6.4, something like that. So even though he did get the opportunity there, the play wasn't there. Now, yes, you could chalk some of that up to, well, he's gotten thrown into a new role. Give him a week to get acclimated. But I don't got time to give people who are unproven a week to get acclimated. I need a win. It's win or go home at this point, in the football season, fantasy football season. So, I hope he makes a great story, but I'm not investing in him this week. So I think I'm going to go with Mirage for him.
Yep. I'm right there with you. I like the idea, but I don't know if I trust. The one thing with Indianapolis that I do like, though, is their linebackers. They play so much zone and there's one thing that I've learned more as I've played is that the heavy zone linebacking cores have a tendency to rack up tackles at a greater efficiency, which would put them in a good spot. But I'm still not 100% sold. And one thing Ruguru has here, he thinks JJ the third played 100%. He has. He's played 100% for the last few weeks, but his percentage of box snaps versus free safety snaps has fluxed. It's whipping down, the opposite of Jordan Fuller as well. So it's, they do rotate up in the box occasionally here and there, but I've seen there's been more snaps. Like last week was one of the first times that JJ the third played more box snaps than Fuller did. So it does bounce back and forth, a little volatile there, but not something that I'm going to totally be too concerned with in that situation. There's a situation in Miami, Jorge. You may have heard of Jerome Baker. We talked about him earlier. I know that you guys, well, one specific, lost him for your Dynasty League. I, again, hate to talk about that and bring that up. But he is out. We saw, Jamie, if you're still here, Duke Riley step in and play what I would consider the majority of the snaps in his replacement. It was... I won't say expected, because I expected David Long to be the primary linebacker in that situation. But it was Duke Riley who played 100% of snaps. He didn't have the efficiency necessarily that David Long did. Still sub 10%. David Long is the better efficient linebacker. But can Duke Riley carve out a spot to be a money play for you this week?
He carved out a spot. That's definitely, obvious for the Jets. Going against the Jets, I think I'm going to go money. Here. I think the efficiency is not where I want it to be. When I'm looking at potential options here, but again, it's the every down roll. This should be a squash game for the Dolphins. Theoretically, right? Monday night should have been a squash game too, but look what happened. But it doesn't matter as long as you get the opportunity to make plays. So give me money here for Duke Riley.
I'm going to go I'm taking the Mirage side, just strictly on the fact that if I can't get the efficiency that I want for a Jets team that doesn't necessarily benefit opposing linebackers in terms of tackle percentage and tackle upside, that leaves me a little worried. I think that in the deeper leagues, there's a case to be made, but this is the first one that we haven't necessarily agreed on. That's okay. You know what? That's if someone here really is, desperate to have Duke Riley in their lineup, then just pick a side. Do you like Jorge or me better? And then let us know and rub it in our faces at the end, which is fine.
The legend of Duke Riley will grow as
the legend, as a Landon Roberts 2.0.
Hey, what? You mocked me. You sullied that man's name all off season. And then look at you, Landon Roberts, and look at him now. He's prospering as the middle linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
No, it was the Miami Dolphins. That's why I said, because he was supposed to step in with the Dolphins at time. And I listened to some damn Dolphin fans on Twitter and some of their beat writers who were talking how good he is. And, oh, man, you should watch him hit. He is just a monster. Oh, he destroys people in practice. They don't want him to even hit them. They want to all wear red practice, no contact jerseys around him. He is a beast. And he comes out and puts up one tackle on like 60 snaps. And then the next game, same thing. Oh, he was just, it was first game. Don't worry. It's going to be blah, blah. And then it was nothing again for the same thing. So that's why I'm out on Landon Roberts.
I hear you.
Earlier, we talked and we kind of had a precursor to what playoff opportunity can bring up in terms of week 16. And so for those people out there that have a first round bye and are looking ahead to week 16, I took a look at a couple matchups, each position that you may be able to look at your waiver wire and take advantage of. So for defensive line, I looked at 3 different games. I looked at Seattle versus Tennessee, the Jets versus Washington, and Philadelphia versus the Giants. Primarily because those are 3 of the offensive lines that have been generous to opposing pass rush. There are also 3 teams that in matchups that I believe the team is going to be in a battle where they're going to want to try to keep pace and throw the ball more. Washington, Jets notwithstanding. The Jets have played. I mean, we saw the Jets in Houston this past week. And Dakota, I know you're the Jets fan. If you're still listening, yeah, you mentioned somewhere where it was 30-6 and it could have been 30-0. You were correct. The Jets played an incredible game. And if they keep that up, that to me even builds a little more of an upside for the Washington offense to keep going, therefore improving the pass rush. So let's talk with Seattle and Tennessee, Jorge. Who's someone across that defensive line that you may think that could be out there potentially that might be in a really good spot?
Look, edge rushers, especially versus Tennessee. Give me Boye Mafe. You just love what he's doing there for the Seattle Seahawks all season long. In week 14, he had 80% of snaps. I mean, yeah, he's the guy you want there in terms of that matchup, as well as going against the Jets. Yeah.
I mean, like you said, last week, sure, the pressure rate wasn't there. The win rate wasn't exactly ideal, but we've seen week in and week out that Boye Mafe can go on a stretch run and give me the snaps. In a game like that, you put me on the field for 80% of the snaps from a defensive lineman, and I think that the upside definitely is there. The second game, we said maybe to pay attention to, I talked earlier about the Jets against the Commanders. I think this might not be a barn burner of a game, but I think there could be offense in this situation. And if that's the case, I got to love both pass rush typically, but I don't trust anybody on the Washington side from a pass rush standpoint. So I'm going to look at the Jets. You and I both have paid attention to 2 of the guys, notably Bryce Huff and Jermaine Johnson. John Franklin Myers has an ankle injury, which could mean even more snaps for Jermaine Johnson and Bryce Huff. Are either one of those 2 guys people that you may be focusing on in this particular matchup?
Bryce Huff, he really hasn't all this season been given the clear-cut opportunity to be the predominant 1 or 2 when it comes to edge rusher for the Jets. But what he has been is extremely efficient. We go back to last week, had a win rate of 21.6%, meaning he was able to beat his offensive tackle counterparts and get apply pressure rate of 13%. And it sucks. He hovered right around that 53% snap share. But you're right. With no John Franklin Myers potentially not playing this week, I'm leaning more Huff just because of the efficiency over Jermaine Johnson.
Yeah. And I just, I can't quit Jermaine Johnson. Like the stretch I saw of, like in week 9, that 9 pressures and the multiple sacks. I mean, he had 5 sacks over the stretch of like 5 games. And I want to see that output. And I think Huff is the one that realistically, I think is, like you said, the volatility to have that 2 sack on limited snaps, but he's going to get more snap opportunities. I think he's going to be the beneficiary of an elevated floor as a result of the snaps. Because I don't think he's one of those guys that, just because he plays more snaps, he's not going to still have some upside efficiency wise. But Jermaine Johnson, I think, is the better pass rusher between the two from what I've seen, but I like both in that specific matchup because earmuffs, but Washington just they can't stop the pass rush. You know that, but
I know.
let's hope that Sam Howell can get the ball out soon and quick because my Scott Fish team will rely on him to continue to move the ball. And then the last matchup there is Philadelphia against the Giants. The Giants this past week actually did a really good job of keeping Tommy Cutlets upright, and I think that that's a situation that it's hard to have any Philadelphia pass rushers on waivers. You're maybe Josh Sweat, but for the most part, Hassan Reddick and crew will all be rostered. Let's take a look at the linebacker matchups here, Jorge. The first one I want to highlight is Arizona against the Bears. The reason I mentioned that game is because the Chicago Bears over the last really month have been as generous, if not the most generous teams to opposing linebackers. They're moving the ball, now with efficiency. They're getting third down conversions, and that leaves Arizona on the field. Josh Woods. That's an intriguing name that I would venture to say is probably available on many waivers. Is Josh Woods against that Chicago team someone that maybe looking ahead could be a very sneaky pickup as a Week 16 LB3 in some of the deeper leagues?
We have, like I said, this week going against San Francisco, Week 16, Chicago, Philadelphia. You look at his solo to assist ratios the past 3 weeks, weeks 11, 12, 13, 6-1, 4-1, 5-7. As a linebacker 3, he's bordering for me 3-4. To be honest with you, probably leaning more towards the 4, just because you haven't seen, with this, with Kazir White going down to injury, we thought, oh man, we'll just plug and play, insert linebacker into the role there, and it hasn't been glaringly impressive. So I don't know if I would roll. I think you can do better than Josh Woods, but if you needed to in a pinch, given that opportunity, given those teams, I wouldn't scold somebody for doing it.
Right there with you. Can't disagree. I like the snaps and I like the 12 tackles in the last game, but I don't necessarily love the player that Josh Woods is. What about the next option? Cleveland versus Houston. We've seen Cleveland being very generous to opposing linebackers. Christian Harris is a name. Blake Cashman could be out. Is Christian Harris not only a good play, a money play for Week 15, but maybe Week 16 as well?
Yeah, I'm all aboard Christian Harris. I think what you said earlier was spot on, with Perriman still being there and Toa potentially eating into snaps there, into each other's snaps, Perriman that is, and Toa. Give me Christian Harris.
And then last but not least, we talked earlier, Alex Anzalone, Detroit against Minnesota. Minnesota, another one of those teams that has been generous to the linebackers. We're not sure if we're going to see Nick Mullins spread the ball even more. I know the running game has been difficult now with Alexander Madison banged up. It could be more pass heavy. I don't know if that bodes well for Alex Anzalone, but I think he is another player who, from a percentage of snaps, will be on the field. Maybe temper expectations. Defensive backs, Jorge. We know defensive backs are a crapshoot. I mean, if we have to, let's take a look at Baltimore. Baltimore versus San Francisco. San Francisco, extremely generous to the opposing defensive backs. Geno Stone, we talked about earlier. Is Geno Stone someone, or are you maybe pivoting? Is there anybody else? I mean, I don't think that there's a safety outside. I mean, with Kyle Hamilton out, Geno Stone would be who I would probably say could be a solid pickup for Week 16 in a pinch. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I do agree if Kyle Hamilton does miss time. But, somebody who, just off of name value, one of which I'm going to say for our fades and plays a little bit later. But, for those of you who are unaware of, Jordan Battle here, Cincinnati Bengals, his 45% box snap utilization in Week 14, 44.6%. That is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And if he's somehow on your waivers, you look at Week 16 against Pittsburgh, has, maybe a more difficult matchup against Kansas City. But the Week 16 matchup right there, if Jordan Battle's available, I think he's somebody you should definitely be trying to acquire and put on your roster this week.
Absolutely. Pittsburgh over the last month has allowed upper top 12 tackles or top 12 scoring to opposing safeties. And so another good name to throw in there. Last but not least, New York Giants, Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles, another one of those teams that gets opposing safeties, has been all season generous. As of late, they've fallen off just a little bit, but they're still right around there with the Steelers. Is Jason Pinnock a name that you may pay attention to? Or is it more Xavier McKinney? But Xavier McKinney is most likely rostered.
Yeah, so Xavier McKinney, if memory serves, has had the majority of the box snaps going his way in recent weeks. So that would kind of make me shy away from Pinnock. And the tackles, haven't been there in terms of, high tackle numbers. You go back to week 10, 9, 4, 9, 4, 6, 4. Going against Philadelphia, we don't know what Philadelphia team are we getting. Are we getting the heavy run-oriented Philadelphia Eagles? Now, week 17, I will say against the Rams, there I think I'd be a little bit more higher on Pinnock. But for week 16, I don't think so.
There you go. I think that's a nice little look at week 16 to give us an idea of players that we may decide to play and some we decide to fade. Let's take a look at week 15 fades in place.
Nice.
Yeah, let's take a look at good old week 15, week 1 of the playoffs. This is some of the guys that if you have to make a decision, I realize that we can't address every single player that might be a decision to be made. That's going to be best served for Sunday morning. You can find us from 9 a.m. Eastern to 12 p.m. Eastern, where we discuss every game, IDP and offense, in the Fantasy and Frames pregame show. Come join us, and we can have more of these detailed questions. But let's start here, Jorge. Let me jump into defensive line real quick, because I'll tell you somebody I'm playing. Love the matchup, love the player and what he's turning into and what we can see in a given week is a player like Derek Brown. And I realize that not everybody's going to play defensive tackle leagues, but as a defensive tackle / defensive end that is capable of a defensive line ceiling that he possesses, it's rare to find a defensive lineman that you talk about ad nauseum tackle floor. And here's a guy who has multiple 10 tackle games, something you don't necessarily see from anybody. Last time he played against the Falcons, he had 8 tackles in that game. Here's the Atlanta Falcons team that has allowed the most tackles to the defensive lineman by a substantial margin over the past few games. I don't believe that Desmond Ridder is going to throw the ball 40 times again. So I do think this could lean on a more run attack like they've shown over the past. Derek Brown, if in a situation where he, wants to rush the passer, he has that ability. I mean, he's, with Brian Burns next to him. So I see that tackle floor, feels safe. I like the matchup against Atlanta. I just feel like Derek Brown is one of those guys that when you're choosing between the sack or bust player, you choose Derek Brown. Speaking of that, I'll give you the option. You're looking at Derek Brown or Sam Hubbard. Sam Hubbard, you think, okay, here's a person who typically the tackle floor would be on his side, right, Jorge?
Yes.
You would think, okay, Sam Hubbard. He might not get to the quarterback, but he's going to give me the tackle. So let's take a look over the past 4 games. How many total tackles does he have? 10. Not the combination that I'm looking for. Let's look over the past 3 weeks from pass rush. Maybe he's getting to the quarterback. Is he? No. He ranks 54th out of 54 eligible defensive ends in quarterback pressures per PFF with only 4. Those 2 in combination just completely terrify me. I think Trey Henderson can do what he's going to do because I think he's a better pass rusher and better overall defensive end than Sam Hubbard is. But Minnesota's done an extremely good job against opposing pass rush. They've given up a few more as of late, but that's probably the carousel of quarterbacks they've gone through and injuries, etc. But I don't want to start Sam Hubbard this week. I don't like the tackle floor. I don't like the sack upside. It just seems like I'm out. Let's go to the backside of the defense. Let's talk about defensive backs there. Who's someone you're playing this week?
So I'm actually going to cheat a little bit this week, and I'm going to
Love
give you, instead of one play and one fade, I'm going to give you a couple plays. Actually, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to give you three plays.
Whoa.
I know, right? And two of them play on Thursday night. One of which, Aloya Gilman. I know we like to talk about Derwin James. Derwin James is always a must-start, one of the best defensive backs, safeties in all of fantasy football. But Aloy Gilman, you go back since week 9, has 40 total tackles, and has the 8th most solo tackles in that time span using Fantasy Pro scoring. He's averaging 11.5 points per game. Also, since week 9, he only has 10 fewer box snaps than Derwin James. Look, the Chargers are going downhill fast. Justin Herbert's out for the year. This offense is not going to be able to sustain drives. I'm sorry, Easton Stick, for the disrespect, but until you show otherwise. Is that his name? Is that his last name? Stick? I know Easton.
Easton Stick. You were
Wow.
correct.
How about that? Not inspiring a lot of confidence. If you loved the Raiders Vikings, defensive matchup, just you wait till Thursday night. Just you wait till tomorrow night. And Aloy Gilman could be the primary beneficiary. On the flip side of that game, Trayvon Moehrig has been playing very well. Box snap percentage in his side, tackle production has been in his side. Most importantly, fantasy point production has been in his side. So I'm actually, those two people might be the primary reasons why I'm glued to this game from an IDP perspective. And then my last play here, PJ Locke. Look, coming on in relief of Kareem Jackson's suspension, just been playing phenomenally since week 12. 22 total tackles, 13 solos, 3 sacks. He's being asked to blitz, 2 pass deflections, TFLs, forced fumbles. He's just making plays on the ball, averaging 18.1 points per game using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, which has him as the DB5 overall. Detroit is allowing the 7th most tackles on the season to opposing safeties. So give me all the PJ Locke, Aloy Gilman, and Trayvon Moehrig for week 15.
I love that, man. I do. Aloy Gilman, if you look, has been a very underappreciated defensive back. We've talked about him in the past. Going back to week 10, it's been 7 tackles in a PD, 9, 8. And the one-off, if you will, since week 9 has been that 6-0 game against New England, which nobody was putting up production that game. It was ugly. The only thing you can hope for is that you don't get a mimic of the Las Vegas, Minnesota game from last week, combined with the New England game from the Chargers. You want some offense and maybe something, but I think that you'll see better days, and Gilman should be another great option. The other two, of course, are wonderful. I don't want to even consider sitting either one of or any of those 3 if given the opportunity. Out linebacker. So linebacker, of course, is the meat and potatoes, the bread and butter, the whatever analogy you want to use for your fantasy team. Here's who I'm going to fade. I'm going to fade Nicholas Morrow. I do believe that the Eagles as a whole are in a situation now where we may see Nicholas Morrow snaps, Zach Cunningham sacks, snaps, whatever, and Shaq Leonard all starting to muddle together into I don't love any of them. So Nicholas Morrow, we started to see this, and I thought this might happen. You're going to see this rotation of the top 2. It'll be a combination of maybe Morrow and Cunningham, and then Shaq Leonard's going to start to sneak in more on 1st and 2nd downs. Then he'll take a backseat to the 3rd down snaps and let Cunningham play more. Morrow start to sit. But everything I just said right there, the confusion, the chaos, the utter lack of a guaranteed snap share, I don't want anything to do with Nicholas Morrow. I just don't trust him as a player to be that number 1 guy that I want to play in week 1 of the playoffs. So I'm fading Nicholas Morrow. I'm dropping him. And let's see. Should George play 01, drop Ernest Jones, Nick Bolton, or CJ Mosley for Ivan Pace Jr.? All right. This is a week 1 of the playoff scenario that I have to look at. Nick Bolton is questionable now again. I have not got any more information as far as what happened. Last I saw, he went from healthy to questionable. And I don't know if he re-aggravated something. If you saw the game, he had that big arm brace on the entire time. But this might be a situation, he was limited at practice today. I think they want him to play, but I think at the same time, they also know that his health going forward is more important than a week against the New England Patriots.
It's an abdominal issue that he's dealing with on top of his wrist injury that he was coming back from.
Okay. That's I would have a hard time dropping Bolton or any of these guys realistically for Ivan Pace. Golly, I do love some Ivan Pace, man. It's just I'm guessing it's just redraft. This isn't a dynasty format where you would even consider. But what are you doing, man? You dropping any of these guys?
Yeah, look, I have CJ Mosley. I have 100% faith in, Nick Bolton. If I have the spot, I would prefer to keep him. Ernest Jones gets the opportunity, and the defense for the Rams has good matchups for the fantasy playoffs. For me, it comes down to am I willing to wait for the Chiefs to incorporate Bolton to be full go over somebody who's just playing full go now, and I don't have to worry about another linebacker coming in and stealing away tackle opportunities like Ivan Pace has for Minnesota. So I don't want to do it, but if I had to drop Nick Bolton for Ivan Pace, I know this is sacrilege, but if I'm in a bad situation where I'm not projected to win and I need somebody that can help me now, close your eyes, click that button, and make that ad switch right there for Ivan Pace.
Yeah, I would say just, for your roster situation, just make sure you don't have a defensive back or an edge rusher that, you're starting, that you're rotating in to drop on them. Because I would rather keep depth at linebacker than any of the other positions myself. But without seeing your roster and doing that, if you want to send over your roster, George Play to either me or Jorge, you can find me at Nate Markham, Jorge at Jorge B. Edwards. I'd be happy to take a look and even dive a little bit deeper. But let's dive a little deeper at who I'm playing at linebacker this week. And Jorge, if you remember about a month ago, started talking about a specific situation. Now, granted, that was on the heels of an injury to Anthony Walker. But what we started seeing is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah starting to come in and play a significant amount of snaps, something that hadn't been seen out of Cleveland for quite some time. This past week, 93.5% snap share, 12% tackle efficiency. He can be more efficient at times. But the one thing with JOK is that it's not just his time on the field. That helps considerably, but it's his ability to do a lot of different things. He still, as of this week, still ranks among the league leaders in tackles for loss. He's really quick to get back to the line, behind the line of scrimmage. Deontay Foreman, who the lead back for Chicago, realistically, which is sad to say, doesn't necessarily terrify me that JOK can't get the job done. And what we've seen is plenty more rushing opportunities out of Justin Fields, which I think puts JOK with his speed and athleticism in a situation where he will have double-digit tackles this week. And so I'm playing JOK. He is an LB2 for me on the week. I don't want to put him in as LB1, but I'm telling you, I have him and Ivan Pace really, really close to one another. So that makes me feel good. That makes me feel real good.
Not to mention, you look back at Anthony Walker the past couple weeks, like 25% missed tackle, 33.3% missed tackle efficiency. Like, I'm not worried about him stealing any opportunities away from JOK at this point. You know what I mean?
No, and I'm not worried about Grant Delpit stealing any tackles because Grant Delpit's out. So it just seems like, and I love Grant Delpit. I said that last going in on the pregame show. Delpit was in my top 10 in the week. He was really high up there, and the injury and everything, but I do. So JOK, I won't say he is going to get to the quarterback and get a sack, but there are some players who I would, fill my pail up for my sack lunch this week.
Nice. And of course, I am not on cue
Nope.
to. Here we go.
Where are you at, Gator? Gator, miss you. Jorge, one too many Budweisers, but that's okay. You know what? We'll see if he can answer the bell to his sack lunch. Who is your sack lunch this week, Jorge? For people new to listen to Sack Lunch is the final episode of the show where we take a look at one specific player who we can't pick more than once throughout the week that is the most likely in our mind or who will get to the opposing quarterback and have a sack on the week.
Did we ever establish if we talking full sack or are we talking half a sack or?
Yeah, so I mean, technically it's supposed to be a full sack, but considering the different gradient scales and whatnot, I still have been giving half credit to half sacks.
Okay,
on the
okay,
season.
that's fair.
So,
Well, not that makes. I mean, I'm going Michael Holt. Yes, and I'll take the L if he doesn't play because he has been on the injury report. But give me Holt, tackle upside against Washington. Pressure rate, all that. Yes, sack lunch. Boom.
I'll give you a consolation. If he doesn't play, I'll let you pivot to Brian Young. If he does play, it's all Michael Hope. I am going to go with Bradley Chubb, Miami Dolphins against the New York Jets. If you want to talk about someone that's due, let's talk about Bradley Chubb, who over the past 3 weeks is 4th in the NFL in pressures, and yet still hasn't got to the quarterback. That's just a product of time and patience, and I have both in spades. So I am hoping that Bradley Chubb is going to just take advantage of a pass rush that is, really, really devastating at times. This Miami defense can be really scary. There's a good set of people that are betting the Miami Dolphins anytime touchdown every week. And it's paying off pretty good. It really has been. So I think this week I'm not going to guarantee a sack, strip sack touchdown or anything like that. But I will say he does get to Zach Wilson, and I believe that Bradley Chubb will have the sack. I couldn't take Van Ginkel because I've already taken him. So it is Bradley Chubb. Yours is Michael Hope. We are basically wrapping up. I mean, we're week 15. It's the end of the show. It's 3rd and long. It's time for us to get to the quarterback, but it's also time for us to conclude. So last but not least, Jorge, anything you want to take us out with? Eloquent.
Yeah, just make sure you head over to fantasyandframes.com, read our rankings, read our IDP articles, as well as all the other articles we have for you. We got the IDP roundup that Nate goes by every week, looks at the past week's performances and tells you who to pay attention to going forward. We got the IDP starts and sits. Nate, you mentioned the Fantasy and Frames pregame show from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Sunday mornings, answering all your questions on both sides of the ball. Check out all of our other shows here on Fantasy and Frames. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, the Fantasy and Frames podcast. And thank you all very much for tuning in tonight. And Nate, as always, it's been a pleasure, man.
Absolutely. So yeah, Jamie, George, Rougarou, Malcolm, Dakota, Marcus Mosier, the list of everybody that could able to join us tonight. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. And so for Jorge, I'm Nate. We will see you next week.